Good morning, everybody. I'm Catherine Baudry, the Director of the Partnership for the Organization of Innovation and New Technologies, commonly known as 4.0. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this, what we call technical points, which is going to be today a roundtable discussion on text to trends, unlocking new innovation indicators with NLP and text mining. And so we have a number of experts around the table. Just to remember or to recall that these technical points are webinars that focus on new techniques and methods used in the 4.0 projects and beyond. So we've had other members presenting projects that were done outside of the 4.0 little project remit. The aim of 4.0 is to study ecosystem and how they contribute to increasing the country's innovation capacity and, put the country that you want in this. So today, the goal of this presentation is really to discuss how these new trends and techniques in NLP can help provide innovation indicators to measure impact, but also what occurs that leads to this impact. So without further ado, I will present the moderator and the researchers and partners that will be joining around this roundtable. So first, Davide Pilozzotto is the 4.0 data scientist. I guess he's got a PhD in semiotics. Great friend and colleague from a long time. Philippe Chapira is a professor of innovation management and policy at the University of Manchester, where I used to be a postdoc and a fellow. He's also a part-time professor at the public policy at Georgia Tech. Ashkan Ebadi is a multidisciplinary data science researcher with expertise in AI, machine learning, deep learning, graph analytics. He's also an affiliate assistant professor at Concordia University. And if I'm not mistaken, you did your PhD with Andrea Shifarova, right?
Yes, I did.
So he's a bit of an academic grandson because I supervised Andrea's PhD student. We also have around the table Pietro Cruciata, who's a PhD candidate at Polytechnique Montréal under my supervision. And he's just had a wonderful paper accepted yesterday at TFSC. Well done. And finally, another PhD student of mine, Alvar Herrera, who's starting the research at the moment, but he's got 13 years of experience in product and program management, software development. So he's also interested in the subject and quite knowledgeable. And we were hoping to have Michael Héroux-Vaillancourt, who successfully defended his thesis last May, but his presence will be asynchronous because he's already provided answers to the questions. So Davide will be providing these answers. So without further ado, Davide, the floor is yours to manage this roundtable.
Yeah, thank you. So good morning, everybody. I am glad to see you here today. So I will try to introduce a little bit the point was already introduced, but just the perspective we want to underline today, and then this is a round table, so we try to make it as much animated we can. I will try to I will ask you something, and we'll try to debate around this question. And how Catherine said, I have some answer written by Michael that is not here today. So essentially, the main motivation of this roundtable is essentially to see to talk about the output, if we can see, or the advancement that 4.0 has experienced in using new method for innovation studies. With new method, we today are talking about essentially machine learning and natural language processing, so the use of textual data. at the beginning of NLP in the 60s, the objective was to create a parser, morphosyntactical parser. But today, we expect that an LLM is able to resume a text if we want. So a great advancement have been done. And the main point I want to underline, and just 1 minute, is that the computer science exploration has extended beyond computer scientists. What I want to say is that a part of this research, which is often under-recognized, is the transfer of knowledge from computer science to humanities and social science. Because this transfer of knowledge, this adaptation is not so easy. And also computer science need that scholar in humanities, do this job. They have to do this job because they know the needs and they know how to adapt eventually method or eventually algorithm to social science research. I remember my PhD supervisor, Jean-Guy Monnier, which passed away like 2 months ago. He was a philosopher and a pioneer in digital humanities. He began in the 60s to analyze the concept of materialism in Karl Marx's works with punched card computer. So for him, this transfer of knowledge was the core of his research, and it was not so easy. And does not mean that if your team has 3 computer science and you give the job to them, that this adaptation is made. So essentially, this is the main point I want to underline, is that as humanities, as social scientists, we do not just see artificial intelligence develop, but we have to take part of this challenge, of this advancement, this change. And this was the perspective of 4.0 since the beginning. It will be the perspective of 5.5. So this is just my point I wanted to stress at the beginning. And I will begin with the questions. For the first one, I will say, if there is some volunteer to answer at the beginning, try to break the ice. I don't know if in English we say break the ice, in French we say this, in Italian too. I don't know if English if it works. So first question for you, and so is the following: how have innovation studies developed new ways of collecting data, and how has the arrival of artificial intelligence influenced this change? In other terms, do new datasets enable the development of new methods or methodological approach that lead to the detection of new observation? If there is some volunteer.
I'll have a go, David. Maybe answer the question a slightly different way. I'm going from maybe Catherine's opening comments, and it made me think at the beginning of 4.0, which was 4 or 5 years ago, I think we were excited about unstructured data and web mining and altimetrics and things like this. So that now, as we come to the end of this project, it seems that some of those didn't quite work out. Maybe altimetrics didn't really work out as anticipated. But we've moved into a world of much more open, but on the one hand, more open data and these huge data sets, but also kind of the arrival of closed data. For example, is used in generative AI that's there, but we don't really fully understand it. So I guess I think natural language processing was always with us, and text mining. But what we're applying it to and kind of the other methods that we use around it, I think have evolved. I think the underlying innovation, like policy questions, are probably more slowly moving. You know, who's doing what in innovation? You know, what gives you the edge? I mean, those kinds of questions have been around a while. Just my thoughts on how things have evolved in the life of this project.
So Pietro is the following, then Alvar.
Yeah, so it's an interesting point, the one Professor Shabira made, and I kind of agree with that in the sense I feel that the original I also I cannot agree more with the fact that artificial intelligence is bringing new perspective into innovation studies, but I think more I think the original I can say like development of the internet, so the availability of data there was also in the past. So I think I'm thinking more as this new method as an handle for all this data, in the sense that now you can have a more more holistic point of view when you examine the data, just because you know that there are methods and ways that you can handle multiple different data and have so different perspective on it. So okay.
Alvar?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, I think you brought up some historical overview, and I think just to recap, not to do a history lesson though, but the idea of AI started 1956 at a conference, so it's over 60 years. And if you recall, one of the first things, one of the first breakthrough was understanding characters, right? So that was actually 30-something years ago, to be able to read words relatively sort of in a standard procedural. So combined with the vision of 4.0, I think the group in itself we've always had high aspirations, and probably we aimed a little too high. And I'm not saying this on a poor manner, on quite the contrary though. So I think, understanding and building on, for example, Philippe's work and Mikhail's work. There was a few years ago that opened the path of innovation management using NLP. It is something that was significantly different 10 years ago. So each 10 years, as you can actually see now, it's in the past year and a half, with GPT-ish. It did not start with GPT, everyone knows that. But the amount of information and the amount of readily available technologies has been almost exponential, right? So the technology adoption that we will see in the field, it's almost, in my opinion, unimaginable for the next 10 years. So it's I'm going to quote Joshua Bengio that it said, I think a couple of years ago, that there's so many algorithms that we could actually just be busy until 2035, just playing with the current available algorithms. Not to mention the amount of capacity and sort of the combination of closed and open data. Actually, where that might be a different topic, though. But we will migrate to open data. Not to mention that it is getting cheaper. As it's just like cloud, it will get cheaper, and it's getting cheaper. In the past 2 years, all the tokens to analyze words and text has decreased significantly. So the possibilities of using NLP for our field are enormous, because eventually it's not that it'll be almost as ringing a bell, but we'll be able to sort of open the doors and democratize the idea of almost anyone being able to run models with it.
Pascal?
Yes, hello. Before jumping into the question, thanks for the invite. It's a great pleasure to be here. To answer your question, I see at least two different opportunities by using AI and advanced technologies. Let's say I try to address them separately. Like on the data side, I think AI, NLP, and related technologies made it easier to how can I put it? Like to collect data that maybe that was already available, but to collect it to collect massive digital data much easier than before. I can and even to collect new data sources. So I can give you one example. Like you can use, for example, AI-driven web scraping tools to scrape websites, to scrape news articles, company websites, and then to use those new data sources in your analytical pipeline to get new insights. On the analytical side, I think one benefit is that definitely these techniques allow you to analyze larger scale data much efficiently than before. So now you can do things that might not be really possible like 10, 20 years ago. I'm talking about massive, huge data sets and how to analyze them. And another related note here is that by using these techniques, now, in addition to collecting data of different data sources, you can integrate them. So, for example, you can have data, you can have text data, you can have video data, you can have images, then you can integrate them, and that also there's a huge potential there, to have multimodal data. So overall, I think there is a huge potential here.
Yeah, thank you. I underline two point from Michael. So essentially, see in NLP now the interesting fact that we are now able to retrieve pattern in text in an easy way, as Ashkan said. Now, if we have a lot of data, we need 3 years to analyze. Now you can do really easily. And he also worked with introduced the next question to you. Michael worked with a corporate website, which essentially, according to him, without the advancement of NLP, innovation study would probably never or low use this kind of data to try to find the new indicators or proxy for indicator. And essentially, this is the second question, which is really complementary to the first one. What has been your experience in analyzing alternative data sources with NLP or artificial intelligence? And in particular, if you can stress like the advantages and disadvantages, just a simple and straightforward answer. I will probably begin with Pietro because I know he probably has something. We work together, so I know I put him in stress, but with something that I know he is able to answer.
Thank you, David. So practically, yeah, I'm following the step also, Miguel. So I'm also working with the website. So actually, we are collaborating with together with Davide. So yeah, it's really interesting the advancement that there are in this field, that the use of the website is true. Without the advancement, probably the method will be really difficult to handle this data. But and just to give credit, I think the first work at test mining with the website was I think the first paper that I saw was with Gok, and also Shapira was a co-author, and this was the first paper that practically introduced, I think, to all the innovation studies crowd practically the possibility that there are with the website compared to the structured data. So I think for me the interesting part that there are, like when you work with the website, is the multiple the multiple angle that you can touch when working with a website. Right now, like especially with the new method, you can analyze the images, you can analyze the structure of the website, so the tags that they are using, what they are analyzing, what they are highlighting on the text, and also like the generative AI give you another possibility. There is the interpretation of the word that are in the text. Before it was without context, but now we are adding the context on it. So it give you greater possibility on this side. Just so if you want to really make a comparison, I think the rapidity with which the website are updated compared to the structured data gives a bigger advantages for the researcher to use it, with not underestimating practically the issue that there are also, because this website has self-report, so you always need to be careful. And I think another point that we can attach will be for maybe the validation. There's a really valid question at point when you work with the website.
Yeah, just to take the Mikhail thought from his answer, the big difference for him was, the two main sources of data for him was survey, national survey or other kind of survey, and website from a company. So the main advantages of survey is that they are precise instrument, right? It's you have significant. It's easy to have significant and important result, which is hard with the corporate website, because the signal or the data that are in corporate website has to be processed, has to be extracted, has to be understand. So it's hard, but you gain in volume with the corporate website. You can also gain new observable. You can also gain essentially new way of find the same answer that you have, or not the same, but something complementary that you can get with the survey, and can be also you can use several times with scale cost production, if you want, at some point, right? So there is something that I want to jump in the discussion. Someone else or something, Albert?
Sure. I think sort of the introduction of NLP to analyze corporates' websites, I would actually split it in three. First and foremost, it would be speed. As you actually mentioned, you can actually, Davide and also Ashkan, the idea to cross different types of data, right? That before it was an enormous task. It's getting relatively easier each year. And for example, it's government entities like StatsCan will be able to not only create different types of surveys, but analyze them significantly faster. With actually, for example, depending on which survey you're analyzing, for example, if you're analyzing SIPs, it's every 3, 4, 2 years, depending, right? Because it takes quite amount of human power behind it, right? To create it, to send it, to analyze it, and to actually make it public. So you reduce the cycles. So that's actually just a huge gain. The other one is that we're actually getting a lot more unstructured data from websites, right? Before it used to be quite just a very type of structured text, with a very well-defined common websites, if you would. But now we're getting a lot more text, audio, video, and the idea to be able to analyze and to merge unstructured and unstructured data, that gives a tremendous amount of power. And the third one, which I'm actually quite interested in, is the use of synthetic data, right? Because more and more, it's as Pietro mentioned, though, the deployment of websites, it gets done faster. But the idea is that behind them, most of what gets used is not actually humans behind it. There are like very There are softwares with a lot of power behind it with NLP that you can actually just, click and they'll generate everything, right? So it'll be like the snake. It'll be interesting to see, how much it would be like the snake eating itself in a few years, right? Because most of the websites will be trained on previous data, right? And we'll be creating more and more and more websites. So at some point, the system will be analyzing itself. To what point? That is yet to be seen, right? But it is something interesting to talk about the use of synthetic data. By 2030, 90-something% of all data on the web will be synthetic. So that is something we need to be ready for. But it will actually change the connotation, and maybe at some point we'll lack the human element. Who knows? Food for thought.
Yeah, an interesting point of view. Askan and then Philip.
Yeah, sure. So I think each data source brings its own, let's say, advantages and opportunities, and definitely each of them may have some drawbacks. So I haven't started some traditional models, say surveys, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think surveys are open to interpret. There could be some biases. I mean, even in the design of them. So different types of biases that you can imagine anyways, but they are great on the positive side. So I try to give some examples of new data sources that we can use in addition to the traditional ones like surveys, papers, patents, things like that, and then see how we can use them. So I'm going to start with news articles. So on the positive side, they are good, in covering events, innovations, industry developments, just you name it. So you can think of them as chronicles of innovation, right? So we can see the journey. Like if you have historical data of news articles targeted on some specific domain, and then you can document key milestones, shifts in the landscape, and those sorts of analysis. But on the downside, they are written often for a broad audience. Right, so they may lack these, let's say, specific details that you need for deep analysis for innovation activities. The other example is analyzing social media platforms. So they can allow you, to capture real time sentiments and emerging trends. I'm gonna name tweets here, for example. So they can provide immediate feedback that you can get on a new product or technology, but better than me, like these sort of data, they could be really noisy. So not all the content could be useful, and then distinguishing useful information from irrelevant one could be really time consuming. In some cases, trying to find a needle in a haystack. So having that said, I think the opportunity, like I said in answering the previous question, is in having data coming from multiple data sources, curate them, and then integrate them. So that's where the real potential is, in my opinion.
Thank you, Justin. Mr. Shapira?
Yeah, Ashkan's comment about news articles reminded me that with Jan Uti at Georgia Tech and Alexandra Schiller at the University of Ottawa, we actually did a 4.0 analysis of kind of the agri-food systems in parts of Canada. I looked at the social networks, and we used news articles and linked that with information and other business information. And we also tested it with some case studies, talked to people to kind of validate it. That was published in 2021. I wonder now, on going into the future, all of these kind of business news pieces are going to be written by a machine, right? And will that change what's reported in them? Maybe the facts are still going to be in there, but there may be a way in which it tilts towards particular perspectives. So I think, as we do have new sources, but there are new ways of making these sources that might change some things. My second thought was, this is not a new data source, but it was a new method. But we recently did some work looking at the expression of public values in patents. And there's been in AI, and there's been a lot of discussion about issues associated with AI. To what extent are patents, addressing both opportunities and risks? And we used generative AI chat GPT-4 to analyze the text, and actually it was way quicker than the earlier methods that we've used for text mining. And there also was human verification of this, and we felt fairly confident it's been published now. So in a way, it was easy to train, easy to apply, and seemed to get really interesting results. And as we continue that work, there's some hint that that these signals of public values in patents may have an impact in the patent examination process. There's a kind of circularity, though, that once that information kind of gets out, as it were, or we uncover it, then maybe we kind of pollute the data source, because then more inventors and lawyers will just be sticking things in because they may think it's going to influence their chances in the patent examination process. So I think, with all these advances in methods and speed, we also have to think through, what the unintended consequences may be, and if they become established, like if governments really use kind of these unobtrusive methods of mining websites to get statistical data, and companies and owners of websites know that, then lots of issues will get raised about the reliability of what's being reported. So this is kind of, I think we need to think a bit further than just the method per se, but also how it gets used in practice, and kind of anticipating this.
Pietro and then Alvar.
Yeah, so I want to come back either to the comment of Alvar and Ashkan, but also to the comment of Professor Shapiro, because I think the point is always the same, in the sense that probably with the use we're doing with the social media or the business, probably is going to be the same generative AI writing this either the website or the post in the social media that already was polluted by a lot of bots even in the past. But now, it's going to be, I think it's going to be harder and harder if we limited ourselves to just one source of data. So the key, I think, is the one that the other researchers stressed too, is the incorporation of different type of sources. So, for example, the survey alone cannot give the full point, but the survey and the website maybe can give you a point of which the determined public policy is being applied by the companies in a short period. You cannot wait the survey, but that in the survey, some company maybe 2 years ago already received something, some fund, for example. So you can check the progress, but we cannot limit ourselves to one source. And I think this is mostly the trend that I'm seeing in the publication. While I don't know, this is just maybe an impression that I have, so I wonder if the other have the same feeling. But before I was seeing maybe most of research were limited to 1-2 sources. Now I feel that even the 1-2 sources that they are using, they are always englobated with multiple other sources for validation point, or also to have another angle that can validate or invalidate the point that was made by another source. So this global and holistic vision, I think, is the key when using this new data.
Try a lot of time the same thing. If you have the same answer, it means that is the good one. It could be Alvar and then Ashkan.
Not to repeat it, what everyone else has actually said, but it's I think it'll be a combination between NLP, different methods as well as the human element, which will highlight the research of actually the qualitative research, right? That in many cases, unfortunately, it is it's almost seen as a separate thing, right? I think the field has been overly quantitative research dominates, our field. And now with the sort of faster and more robust methods to actually understand the text and structure data can actually give a whole new path for qualitative researchers, which would actually be quite interesting. And one thing, just to build on Pietro's point, would be that websites will be quite similar, right? It's we see it with everything, trends and structured buildings, everything, get sort of a homogeneous, and which will have to dive a lot more into the details, because if the language that gets used, it is quite similar though, to get the right KPI, not the right KPIs, but the right metrics to understand innovation or to highlight innovation management will be quite hard. Which leads me to one point, the last point on this question, which these topics allow us to research and understand many different languages. And although English, though, is primarily, by de facto, the most important or the most utilized language on the website, like on the net, there are models like Command R from Cohere that do incredibly well in many different languages. If you haven't actually tried it, I urge you to do so. And that will actually, in my opinion, will lead to a lot more understanding on what it is to do NLP in different languages, whether it's in Arabic, whether it's in Portuguese, whether it's in Russian, etc. Because each part and each geography will have quite a unique flavor, and these models will not be universal at some point. Yeah, the base model it is, but the actual innovation side of it with the language and the model used to understand that language, though, will create a unique part to understand the innovation, the innovation indicators within the region.
Okay, Pascal?
Yes, I just wanted to add a few words to what Pietro mentioned, because I think everyone is excited about the new techniques and opportunities that they can provide. And okay, different data sources of different types are available, accessible. I have new techniques available. Let's do the modeling. But one key element here that is often missing is massaging data and preparing the data to make sure that data is of high quality. So roughly speaking, like maybe 80% of the effort would be on the data preparation side of the activities rather than modeling. Modeling would be really easy, roughly speaking, if data is of high quality. But if you don't have data of high quality, even if you integrate multiple data sources, the result wouldn't be that great.
Yeah, this is important, and they told me one webinar we had with the 4.0, which was about preparing data and the effort you need to clean, to prepare, this is obviously, I totally agree with this. I will shift, we have a big debate about this point. I will shift a little bit to the next section, to the next part of this roundtable, which is about method essentially. And the next question is the following. So regarding the different existing approach and method, what is, according to you, the most suited for innovation studies? So there is something that you found that is less interesting for innovation study regarding the data that we usually use, and something else which is more, pertinent or suited for your work. So if you want, Askan, do you want to? You have a big experience on that. If you want to begin with this.
Yeah, sure. I can give it a first shot. So, well, I can share my own experience on the research that my team and I are doing on detecting emerging technologies. If you can relate it to innovation studies in that sense. So what we have observed during the past years is that definitely traditional data sources gonna provide advantages. I'm talking about papers, for example, patents, and even surveys here. But one common characteristic that most often we are looking for when we want to decide if you want to add this new data source or not, is that we are looking for dynamic, detailed, and publicly accessible data sets. So to begin with. So these are the three main characteristics that I would say. And you can imagine, like, for example, scientific publications, they can provide you with those characteristics. Then one other thing that we observed is that if you name it new data sources in this line of research, which is identifying emerging technologies, so there is a huge potential for social media data and also news articles. So we are working on news articles, for example, here, because they can provide real-time user-generated content. If we ignore that bot part that is involved in social media, and that's related to the previous comment that I made, that you need to do huge effort on pre-processing and cleaning data. So once that is done, then you can make sure that, okay, this data is user-generated and of relatively high quality, and then you can go for mining patterns and then basically achieving the research objectives. I hope I answered your questions, David.
Yeah,
It was a bit personal experience.
Yeah, no, this is what we ask. I bring the point of Michael, and then if someone else want to jump in, one approach that Michael tested and find interesting was the classical one, essentially the top-down approach. Because in his experience, it was more easy to prepare, or now to recall what Askan said, it was easy to get quality of data when you have this top-down approach, because you find a sort of ontologies or thesaurus about the concept or the semantic field you want to analyze, and you can use more sophisticated or classical text mining techniques to extract information from text. For him, this was still the most suited. And what I would add is true that bottom-up approach comes with a lot of difficulty, or a lot of things that you need more resources, because according to me, when you feed your algorithm with data and you just do not have any perspective to enter in, you just want what is going up, is hard to understand what is pertinent, what is good, what is as quality or what not. Normally, it depends. For student in innovation study, you need expert of domain to analyze and say, okay, this result are in line with the literature, with the domain. So this is for me is still an obstacle, because we should go more and more with bottom up and more automated, if you want, method, but there is a sort of threshold, there is a sort of obstacle that we should pass. So for him, the top-down approach is still the most suited, even if you use advanced or not advanced method. The only down-back with this method is when you are analyzing concept that has high polysemy. In that case, is big. It's hard to extract. What you think about? Not what I said, but what method we can use. So we have a concurrential hands up. So I will say Alvar, Pietro, and Askan.
So I think you summarized it quite well, Davide. One thing that I would actually add, if someone was interested in actually doing a bottom-up approach, is that it's heavily data-driven, a lot more than a top-down approach, which would actually be, you need to take into account all the costs. And through that, So it depending on the situation of the researcher or the group or whatever, right? I don't think, I think a good, I don't want to sound like a politician though, but I think it's a combination of both, right? And, that is something to take into account rather, because if you want to do a very well extensive bottom-up approach, it'll be a lot more expensive. And in terms of sometimes universities can actually be cannot be as easy to find the funds. Just to put that.
Pietro?
Yeah, so I agree with Alvaro that the bottom up is more data driven and there is a need for validation. So for this reason, I think talking about my personal experience, and actually it's a experience that we share, David, because they are we work together on this. We choose more top down approach, but also we left we were working with a grand true, let's say, data. So there was like this B Corp indicator that we were working on, and with using the company website, we did a bit of it was a bit of a mix in the sense of like we choose like a top down approach because we had the keyword from the B Corp score. So there were like the point that the B Corp evaluate to give the score, but we also investigating the website. We use like an approach I don't know if you other had the experience, but it's the zero shot text classification. So we didn't do a heavy cleanup on the website, but we left the interpretation to the model. So this helped us to reduce the time, but also like we were lucky because we had like a ground truth. So we were able to validate pretty easily if the result of the model were interesting or not. So I think for talking about my personal experience, I think I will go with the more top-down approach. But I know the innovation studies, the problem is always to find like the labeled data. This is always the problem.
Ashkan, then Mr. Shapira's go, Ashkan.
Yeah, not much to say. Everything was covered by Alvaro, mainly. Everything that I wanted to say. So I also think hybrid approach is the best one.
Mr. Shapira?
Well, just from a current experience that we're struggling with, so we decided a few months ago to switch to using OpenAlex as our main publication data source. Previously, we'd used Web of Science and Scopus. So OpenAlex has got a lot of advantages, but there are on the top-down, bottom-up, there's a big problem with the concepts, which is kind of their proxy for the disciplines, and we were very unhappy with it. So we decided we will build our own. And also they were moving to research areas, another thing which we also didn't like. So we explored trying to build it from the bottoms up, from the data to kind of identify kind of common research areas. And that's really complicated and time consuming. So we might just go back to concepts just because it's easier. So this kind of trade-off between using what you already have, maybe structured in a database like that, and kind of striking out and creating your own approach, which nobody else may follow, right? So there's always that danger. So this kind of comes back to, for me, I'm a scholar and researcher in innovation policy. For me, it's the question. What's the question I want answered? What data can help me answer that? Which could be qualitative or quantitative or a mix, and then a mix of quantitative methods. And what's a reasonable time frame to do it in order to get some results out? And then that kind of drives perhaps what I would do with data, which might not always be ideal or the best. I look to other people to kind of do the perfect work, but I just wanted to add that into the equation, not to be too data driven. We also should be question driven. What's the question that we're trying to answer, and what data is most appropriate to answer that kind of a question? Appreciate the ways. Thank you. I don't know how to do that on this system.
Yeah, but thank you. This is a really important, and you recall me another webinar in which we talk about this, the fact that we need the question research before to collect data normally, but it's not always the case. We shift to the end of the roundtable. So we touched already the subject I introduced with the next question, which is essential validation. So I want to ask you two things at the same time. So the first things I want to ask you is, which are the most surprising result that you had using NLP? Something that you want to share that was really surprising for you, and that can give us the motivation to go on and using this method. And then the problem of validation. So how we can validate information, or new indicators, or variable that we extract from text. Which are the challenge according to you? So I get a volunteer now. So if you can give me one promising result or something really interesting, and then the validation problem of result. Pietro?
Yeah, so I'm coming back to practically my last comment, in the sense like in the work that we did together, using like the website, and also using this method zero shot, that avoid us a lot of the cleaning that we usually need to do when we work with text mining, right? We usually go through to see what removing the punctuation, lemmatizing the word. So all this creating, maybe sometimes if needed, a bag of word to give a bit more context. But we left practically the full interpretation to the model that we use. And we just give them, we added the keyword that usually B Corp used to create this indicator. So the evaluation that they do based on certain concept. So we pass this concept to the model, and we see, what is the percentage that this concept is represented on this website. So, and then finding that there is actually a correlation between this and the true score of the B Corp. This was was surprising, because it was completely left to the interpretation of the model, and also was really interesting. And to stress out, so we needed we could not let the model just interpret it, but we needed the validation point, and the validation was really important and crucial for our approach. In the sense, we needed this score created by B Corp, by expert on B Corp. So I think it's a really important this point, and it's really interesting. Recently, I saw an article that was published in Technovation, and actually it's called Natural Language Processing for Innovation Search, where it's practically a literature review on the natural language processing approach used for the front end of innovation, for the emerging technology in innovation. And they analyze how the researcher, they apply multiple. So there are like thousands of articles in which they try to apply this method in the last year. And they stress the point that although this is an emerging field between computer science and innovation, so we need to kind of use the best practice of both worlds, right? We need to usually the statistic test and to evaluate the reliability and the robustness of our analysis, but also we need to implement some practice from computer science, allowing the people to use our dataset that we create, share our code, so making the result more reliable. So I think it's the validation is a point that comes from the innovation study. So make it statistically significant research, and validate with something that's real. but also like the best practice of computer science, to share the code, share the data set, increase the readability and the reproducibility, robustness of the research. It's another interesting point. And if you read this interesting article, you're gonna see that it's not always used in the research. So it's rarely used to share the data set, share the code. So in this case, we say that we applied the algorithm and the method, but we don't often say how and what are the results and how what we did.
If you can share it was already shared. Alvar probably shared the paper with us.
No, it's not the paper. It's just the checklist. It's the checklist that Pietro, I think, was talking about, that we should actually have something.
But if you can share with us the paper.
Yes, I'm gonna share the paper.
There is something. Someone else want to jump in, Ashkan?
Yeah, just one quick note, because all my research is applied. So everything that I do, there's an application at the end of the pipeline. And as Pietro mentioned, there are several ways that you can you can take to do the validation. And validation is really huge and critical, in my opinion. So just to name a bunch of them, you can do, for example, cross validation. You can do I don't know, replication studies, sensitivity analysis. But one key thing here, and definitely back to Pietro's point, like open science is definitely a huge thing here. But in addition to all of these, I think it's key to have human experts in the loop. I mean, whenever you design and implement something, to have that domain expert or experts in the loop, from formulation to interpretation, to make sure that everything makes sense to the domain that you're basically working on. And this is of higher significance when you do multidisciplinary research, because you might know the technical knowledge to do the modeling and AI modeling, as I would say, but you may not be that expert, to interpret the thing and make sure that you're actually addressing the right, tackling the right question here.
Yeah, thank you. I would like just the last question. We have a few minutes, and if Mr. Shapiro can begin to answer, because it's essentially the future of innovation study, and which are, according to you, the challenging that we have in community to integrate this new method of NLP, artificial intelligence, in the innovation study. So do you see like a knowledge or information gap that we have to bridge? Like, I don't know, university should change the curricula to change the education of new students, or which is the future for innovation studies in this process of integrating method, according to you?
Yeah, I guess it's a big question. Let me give you what I think is part of the answer. It's almost about preparing for the future. We don't really quite know what the future is going to be, but in preparing for it, training the next generation of innovation scholars to use and understand and interpret and be cautious about these new methods, I think is going to be really important. I think that's now moving into training and how to prompt and to use generative AI, because in a way it's really lowered the barriers to entry to do text mining and maybe look at full text documents and do all kinds of interesting innovation policy analysis. So in a way, the barriers to entry are a bit lower. But I think the challenge of doing good work and robust work that's validated, remains. And I think that the need to train and to bring these new methods into curriculum through summer schools and other methods, that's going to be very important in preparing for the future.
Okay, so I really thank you. If there is something someone of you want to add something, Ashkan?
Yeah. As someone with a background in computer science, so I can share that there are different types of challenges when you want to use AI modeling in innovation studies. And as you said, David, like these challenges range from technical challenges or complexities to let's say interdisciplinary knowledge gap, because most of the time the field would be interdisciplinary. So what I think is that addressing these challenges, it requires concerted efforts in education, collaboration, tool development, community building, everything all together. And the thing is that like these AI methods, often they are, let's say initially for students, they might look a bit complex to learn. So students in innovation studies may not initially have the technical expertise, to implement and fine tune these models effectively. I want to stress on the fine tuning part of it, because you can take a model from the web, it is available, and then use it to your research, and then it could be overfitted to your data, and you don't know about it. So fine tuning and the model to your own research and data is really important. On the other side, like bridging the gap between technical AI insights and their practical implications is also important. So that's where you need to you need to learn about the domain as you move on. So what I do in my lab with my students, the approach that I take is that I often define mini projects for students, and these are mini applied projects. Rather than asking them go and learn about AI, deep learning, or this specific architecture, but to teach them those architectures and concepts in a practical manner, so they can learn gradually as they do the project, and then when you combine all those mini projects, it can form their thesis work. So that's the thing that was most successful in my own experience. And the other thing is, I do believe in collaboration. Like collaboration between researchers of different backgrounds is going to facilitate transfer of knowledge. So as you move on, you can learn about the domain. On the innovation side, innovation researchers can learn about the AI side. So it's really beneficial to have these joint research initiatives.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with this, the collaboration. Just one thing I want to add, to say again, to repeat probably, is that, a scholar from humanities and social science has also to learn probably the method. We do not have just to give to the computer scientists of our team the responsibility to do. No, they have to learn. So this means they have to learn programming, they have to learn the algorithm behind, because it's not true that interdisciplinary teams means that everybody does something without, in separate way. We have to communicate. Collaborate is communicate, but we have to share knowledge. This is my opinion. I don't know if there is someone that wanted to add something. Alvar, I don't know if Ashkan wanted.
Sure. I'll just add, I think they were just incredibly relevant point. I'll just add what more and more people are now turning their eyes into, which is good, which is the ethical part on understanding how to deal with data, what type of data, how to treat it, interpret the results, and how to actually publish it, like, show it to the public, right? Everyone knows here that at some point, the idea of garbage in, garbage out, and what you get, and you can actually torture the data to get in a way what you want, right? So there's a huge ethical side that we need to incorporate from, the ground up.
Pietro, and is the word of the end. You conclude the roundtable.
Well, I cannot agree more with Alvaro and Ashkan in the sense of like the ethical point. It's really important. They also like the collaborative environment that really help, and I think it can shape the future of innovation studies. And so yeah, I'm really happy also because this, I think all this tool, there is also like an education purpose on the tool that we are using, right? The generative AI is not like you can use also to learn from it. So just know, like execute a command, but also learn why it's doing this. And if it's working, learning, use the generative AI as a teacher, no? You can go farther than just give me this line of code. You can explain why I gave you this line of code. You can explain why it's using a certain command and all of this. So I think there is always like this way that we can use the tool that we have available, and to bridging this gap between the both field, right? Computer science and innovation. Both right now, like there are generative AI models that learn most of the concept of the innovation studies and vice versa. So we can, so if depending on the background, we can learn for sure. So not just use as a calculator, but also like go further than this.
Yes. Kathleen?
Well, I think that was a fascinating discussion. I think it's a nice ending towards the what we would call the proper governance of AI. And I think there's a group at Ivado who's going to be studying exactly that, the governance of AI. So what you have all mentioned in the end is exactly on the cards of what the Ivado is actually wanting to do. So, well, thank you all. That was a fascinating discussion. So I will wish you a good rest of the day. Philip, it's going to be nearly good evening, but it's still good afternoon. So thank you all for the great discussion, and we look forward to our discussions later for 5.0. So I'll just stop the recording.